Today I'm going to tell you about my 5 favorite fantasy standalone books. Okay, scratch that. It's a couple more than 5, but in this incredible genre, how could anybody narrow it down to just 5? I'm somewhere between a beginner and an intermediate fantasy reader, so that means that all the books I'm going to suggest to you today are easy to read and highly accessible to people who are just dipping their toes in the genre. In fact, the reason I started this channel is because I love reading fantasy and I want to document my journey and interact with people who are also in love with the fantasy genre. Let's get things started with my honorable mention, and that is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This is a seafaring adventure with magic, found family, humor, and something I can deeply relate to, which is the protagonist is a single mom in her 40s. Basically, Amina is living the retired life with her family and raising her daughter, even though she's really missing her adventure lifestyle. One day, though, she gets visited by an older woman who basically blackmails her into finding her granddaughter. So Amina gathers up the old crew and goes on adventure and misadventure. It was a wild ride. I absolutely loved it. I really connect to Chakraborty's prose and writing style, and I love that she has such a deep knowledge and love for Middle Eastern history, folklore, and culture. The reason I'm calling this an honorable mention is because this is actually the first book in a series. However, this book is pretty much a standalone as it wraps up quite beautifully at the end, and the only reason you'll be itching for the next book is due to Chakraborty's beautiful, phenomenal storytelling. So starting with my top 5, the first I want to mention is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. This book is about a transgendered young girl who just wants to play the violin, a master violinist who makes a deal with a demon, and a bunch of aliens running a coffee shop in the States. Yes, it seems like these pieces wouldn't exactly fit together, but they do. They make a whimsical, beautiful tale that will leave you with warm fuzzies all around. This is Rika Aoki's debut novel, and I honestly find that hard to believe because I found her narrative and prose so easily accessible as well as entrancing, and I had a smile on my face the whole time. I highly recommend this book for just a delightful tale that will leave you feeling really, really happy. And kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum is my next book, The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Those of us who know a bit about Greek mythology know that this has a rather tragic ending. However, this is one of my all-time favorite books, and I tend to reread or re-listen to it once a year. It is filled with a hauntingly beautiful love story, and just as hauntingly beautiful is Madeline Miller's prose. It may be low on magic, but it's high on Greek lore and mythology, and I just find this story captivating and easy to read, even though it breaks your heart as you do it. I fell in love with both Achilles, but especially Patroclus, who is the narrator of this story. If you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend that you do, and bring a box of facial tissue or Kleenex because you'll be needing it. The third book on my list is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. You may have already heard about it if you're a lover of fantasy because this book has taken the world by storm in the last couple of years. Basically, Viv is an orc who has decided to give up her bounty hunter lifestyle. She wants to start anew, live a quiet life, and explore her deep love for coffee by opening a shop, which is basically unheard of in the part of the world she is settling in. And her love of coffee and desire for a quiet life is something I can profoundly relate to. This book has humor, found family, and just gives you fuzzy, warm feelings throughout the story. Just like Light from Uncommon Stars, I smiled throughout this book. I love the cast of characters. I found this just such a quick and easy read, but profound in some ways at the same time. The only word I can describe this book as is cozy. So this is perfect for the fall time right now. Get a cozy blanket, a steaming mug of your favorite cup of coffee, and just enjoy Travis Baldree's adorable story. Book number 4 on my list is The First Bright Thing by J.R. Dawson, which is also another debut. This book is actually a historical fiction in an alternate Earth set between World War I and World War II. At some point near the end of World War I, though, people were bestowed upon with basically magical powers. Think about X-Men kind of powers. That's what happened. And these people and the powers they used are called sparks. Rin is our main character, and she is a spark herself, and with her wife and best friend, run a circus of sparks. They travel through the United States, enchanting audiences all around. However, when these sparks use their powers together, they discover the atrocities that are about to happen during World War II, and they want to do everything they can to stop it. At the same time, though, they're running away from an evil ringmaster who is a nightmare from Rin's past. I fell in love with this book. I actually listened to the audio, which is a dual POV, obviously, as is the book, and the audio is phenomenal. So if you can listen to it, I highly recommend that as well. What I loved about this book is the beautiful lyrical prose and its message of self-acceptance, learning how to let go of your past, and also learning how to love yourself. Highly, highly recommend. Okay, so this is where I cheated because I couldn't decide on just one book for my fifth entry. So I have two, and they are both by Brandon Sanderson. They are Tress of the Emerald Sea, which was his secret project #1, and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which was his secret project #3. I'm slightly obsessed with Brandon Sanderson, his magic, his world building. He just has such a craft for this genre, and I cannot decide which one of these two books I love more, so I included them both. So Tress of the Emerald Sea is another seafaring adventure. Tress lives a quiet life, but decides to throw all that away when she wants to go rescue the man she loves. So along the way, she collects people to help her on her journey for an adventurous, wild ride. This was an utterly delightful tale. Brandon Sanderson said it's kind of his take on The Princess Bride, and I couldn't agree more. It is also hilarious, particularly if you're already familiar with his Cosmere because of who narrates Tress of the Emerald Sea. I found this book to just be both lovely and hilarious because of that. But don't worry, if you haven't read any other of Brandon Sanderson's work and you're just picking this up for the first time, you will not be missing out on anything. This is a delightful kind of fairy tale on its own. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is also delightful. I know I'm using that word a lot, but that's what it is. But it is very different from Tress. We have two characters, Yumi and Painter. Yumi lives a very regimented lifestyle as she is one of the central figures in the religion of her world. It is a very strict lifestyle, and it's not one that she particularly loves. Painter isn't particularly fond of his life at the moment either. He lives in a world of darkness aside from strips of purple and blue lights, kind of like the colors that you see on the cover, that run throughout his world. His job is to paint nightmares out of existence that come out of the darkness. Basically, events happen that intertwine Yumi and Painter and their lives together. And I kind of don't want to say more than that because that will spoil the surprise. What I will say is that this was just a lovely love story. It was also hilarious, again, due to who narrates this story. Again, if you're familiar with the Cosmere, I think you will really, really enjoy it. But at the same time, I think you will also relate to the message that this story gives, which is you really don't know much about another person unless you walked a mile in their shoes. I had a day to myself. I sat down and read Yumi, and I finished it in one day. I absolutely loved it. Brandon Sanderson said that this was basically his love story, and he wrote it for his wife. And if I was her, I would just be absolutely delighted with that result. So those are my 5, okay, fine, 6, okay, fine, 7 fantasy standalone novels that I wanted to recommend. I would have loved to come up with a list of 10, but being relatively new to this genre, I couldn't really justify giving a proper recommendation for more, but I hope to do so in about a year. Have you read any of these books? I'd love to hear about your thoughts and what fantasy standalone books you'd recommend, so please put them in the comments. And also, if you'd like to hear about a highly underrated fantasy series that is one of my all-time favorites, please check out this video over here and like and subscribe if you like this content and would like more. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and happy reading.